People tend to think of social media as a marketing tool. That's stereotypically what we've used it for. But according to McKinsey Consulting, there's something that's twice as valuable economically that we can do with social media.
I'm Bill Herman. We're here today at the Global Forecasting and Marketing Conference, and our guest is Dave Nelson, CEO of Dialogue Consulting. And Dave, you just gave a fantastic presentation to our audience, primarily about social networks and private social networks and how companies can harness that. Is there a starting point? If I'm a company that's developing a social strategy, an online strategy, is there a starting point or a series of questions that I need to ask myself that'll get me started?
Sure. And the first thing I think we got to look at is we talked two different applications of social media, social networking today. One is the classic external marketing. That's what everybody thinks of. But we also spent some time on using it to enhance collaboration among employees. Either way, I look at social media, social networking as tools that are more efficient for some of our communication challenges. So I guess we've got to decide which communication challenge do we want to go after? Is it marketing or is it employee collaboration? But as I mentioned, McKinsey Consulting predicts that perhaps 2/3 of the economic value is going to come from improving employee collaboration. That's not what people usually think about.
And when you talk about that, historically, certainly in the last 15 or 20 years, that has meant we send out an email and we copy the people who are involved in that project. But you're seeing increasingly, especially with a younger demographic, that's less effective. Where are people taking that, and what are some of the sites that are enabling that?
Yeah, let's just acknowledge communication tools evolve. I'm guessing you haven't sent a telegram so far today. I don't see you wearing a pager, and I'm hoping that you're not carrying a BlackBerry, right? 2009, we all had BlackBerries. They had 50% of the smartphone market, and now we got our Androids and iPhones. And so the tools evolve, and I think we've gotten stuck in email. According to a great book called The Tyranny of Email, in our businesses, we now spend more than 40% of our time working email. And yet, in a lot of ways, email is an unproductivity tool. It's the Pony Express of the moment. And we can look at the new generation, the so-called millennials, 1982 to 2000. I have a 25-year-old son. If I want to send him an email, I send him an email. Then I send him a text to say, go read your email. They could use email, but they don't because they found some better tools. And, the key strategy I think they use is the idea of don't put everything into one pipe. If it's time critical, let's use a tool for time critical, and then we can use a rich media tool for everything else. And that simple separation, texting versus Facebook, say, businesses can emulate that same strategy. And that's where these new group texting tools come in that are built for employee groups. Yammer, Chatter, Slack. These are the new tools. And, how do you get started? I have a piece of advice on that, too, because you never know in your employee base or with your customer base if any given initiative is likely to work. And so, hey, it's an experiment. Let's get a small team, a small amount of resources, and let's try this out. And if we have a way to measure its effectiveness, then we can decide, is it generating a positive ROI and it merits more investment, or should we just fail fast on this one and try something else? So I always bring this philosophy of it's an experiment.
And tools like Yammer, some of these things, are they cumbersome to implement? Will they lay over top of what most people are already using?
Yeah, Yammer, Chatter, Slack, they're very simple texting and or document sharing tools. And of course, we use email for a lot of these things today. But then everybody has to organize their own inbox and organize their own document storage, whereas when you use something like Slack and you're combining the communication and the document sharing, it all becomes sort of a group resource. And not only does it remove some organization work from us, but we get the ability to do global searches. And this is where none of us is as smart as all of us. I think it really unlocks that kind of power. So not hard to implement. The basic version on these things is free, so you can do your experiment very easily. But I'll tell you where most organizations fail.
What's that?
It's the corporate culture doesn't embrace it. The behavior doesn't change. And so it really, I think the challenge is not the tool or learning it or even finding valuable things to do with it, but getting people to change their behavior. The reason we spend 40% of our time on email is we got comfortable with it. And so we just do more and more and more email, even if it's not the most productive way to communicate.
And Dialogue Consultant, certainly we know you as a speaker. You're very effective in that realm. But Dialogue Consulting as an organization, are you spending a lot of your time trying to change that culture that you just mentioned from the top down, trying to get CEOs that might be of an age where they came into power before these tools,
right,
getting them to understand it?
That's exactly the audience I'm typically working with. So a C-level executive audience, stereotypically it's going to be a baby boomer. All this technology stuff came up after, I mean, even computers in some respects. And, I think it's a very dangerous business strategy to say, I don't do technology, that's not me. You're putting your business at a heck of a risk if that's your strategy. So I spend my time trying to show the typical business leader the power of the tools. I'm not expecting them necessarily to start blogging or do a LinkedIn page or whatever, but to appreciate the importance and allocate corporate resources. Start to charter those teams to do the experiments. Find the millennials in the organization that would love to have this as a project and try to generate value for the company. I think it's interesting. Somebody observed that in all of human history, it has been the older generation that passed down knowledge to the younger ones, right? It was the apprenticeship and so on. Boom, we got a very smart group of millennials here that have learned all these new tools. It's perhaps the first time that we in the older generation, and I'm a baby boomer myself, we can learn from the younger crowd. And by the way, they have a lot to learn from us too. So how about a little bit of cross-training here?
Fantastic. Now, we spoke briefly about internal communication tools and enhancement. Let's look at it from the public-facing side. I think some companies, if they're new to online strategies, they're saying, I'm on Facebook, I'm good. What are the limitations? Is that a realistic thing anymore?
Yeah, I think Facebook maybe used to be good, but a couple possible mistakes. Number one, we have to get our audience engaged, and the only way to do that is by providing something that's valuable to them. It used to be in the olden days, we could buy people's attention. We called that an advertisement. You can't do that anymore. Everybody's too busy. We're too overloaded with information. So now you have to produce good quality content to earn their attention. And I see a lot of people charge into Facebook, and it's just more of that one-way monologue like we've always done in marketing. Look at my products, look at my services, look at the pictures of our company party. And that's not going to get the audience engaged. But the other thing people don't realize about Facebook, and all these tools change. Right now, if a bunch of people follow you on Facebook and you put a post out there, Facebook actually doesn't show that to people anymore. Too much stuff was in their feed, and about 2 years ago, Facebook implemented what might be called a feed optimization system. And it turns out that now when you post something to those 10,000 people that like you on Facebook, about 1%, maybe 2% will actually see it. So you're talking to not 10,000, but 100, and that's crazy inefficient. Now, you can overcome that by paying. And so my message is either learn how to use the part of Facebook that you've got to pay for, or don't do Facebook. There's other stuff out there.
True, and you spoke, made some excellent points about product planning, product dialogue planning, and how some companies are really embracing that. Facebook's a little more limited, you're posting and that's it, but give me some examples of product planning dialogue, or product dialogue planning as you called it, and how companies are using that. You mentioned that the consumer is in a better position to talk about what is truly valuable more than the creator in many cases.
Right, exactly. And we say consumer, but even as a B2B consumer, if you will. So let's use the word broadly like that. About 200,000 businesses now engage in a dialogue with their customer base to understand how to improve their products and services. It's called an idea exchange, and you don't have to build it. There are 4 providers out there, in the cloud. You get to put your branding on it, but you can go to salesforce.com or uservoice.com or jive.com and acquire the base capability. And then when your target audience has an idea, has a suggestion, they can post it. Other people can vote. And so it's sort of like, we know focus groups or brainstorming groups, but here we add, because of the voting, the democracy. And I love it because I've run a lot of software companies in my life, and boy, when you run a software company, all things are possible. You get so many ideas from customers, But, is it a good idea or not? How do you know? I don't like to tell people their babies are ugly, but the process here implicitly does it. The best ideas get voted on. They come up to the top. They get the most number of votes. And so somebody who made an obscure suggestion that really didn't have mainstream value, it never, floats to the top. And so the communication is implicit. That wasn't a mainstream idea, and so the company shouldn't do it.
Are there any examples, very recognizable companies that are doing that effectively, in your opinion?
Oh, there's tons of them. One that comes to mind, you should go look at what Dell Computer is doing in terms of getting ideas from their customer base. Or Starbucks. We're all consumers of Starbucks, right? Go to mystarbucksidea.com and you'll see their idea exchange in action. And if you've got an idea for the company, you can tell them and then watch what happens. Starbucks has now implemented more than 275 ideas that originated with their customers. Ideas that I've got to imagine are helping them compete against the what we might call the interlopers in the premium coffee business.
Without paying a company to come in and advise them.
Exactly. In fact, in some ways, it's better than that. Aren't your consumers, your customers, the ones you want to have help guide you? To me, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, love it.
Let's look at it from a different aspect of this. And you talked about LinkedIn. You spent a good amount of time on LinkedIn.
Yeah, the professional social network.
I think a lot of people are still at a very entry level. I don't think people harness the tools as much. And I saw a lot of heads nodding when you were running down some of the things people could do. What are some of the strategies that people, again, what are the basic questions they might ask as they're getting started?
Right, so LinkedIn is the professional social network. I describe it as Google, but for finding people. Now, there's way more to it than that, and we could spend 3 hours on LinkedIn talking about the groups and the news feed called Pulse and so on, but let's just get to what I think is the number one thing people need to know. There is a search function in LinkedIn. And in fact, at the top of most pages, you'll see it right at the center top, and on the right side of that search box is a button that says Advanced. You click that, and it puts you into advanced people search. And now you can go looking for, hey, if you need a new social media manager for your company, you put in keyword social media, title manager, and you get a long list of people. It's a query engine in that sense. I love the fact that you can put in a competitor's name and set the drop-down list to past employees of your key competition. And most companies have about 4 times more past employees than current. Those people know stuff, they have industry skills, they have contacts. So for doing either competitive analysis or hiring talent, a query like that, I don't know what else in the world could show you all the people that used to work for your competitors. People know stuff. I find for salespeople, most salespeople sell to certain titles, right? I love to sell at the C-level. You can find CEOs within 50 miles of you. And then what LinkedIn does is it shows you how you're connected to that person. Is it somebody who is a direct connection because we've agreed to connect, or is it somebody who is, I think the real valuable part is the second connections. I may be looking to meet somebody that you know. That is, to me, a second connection. And when I work with you to make that introduction, or maybe the 3 of us get together for lunch, that's way better than if I cold call this person, right, who has no idea who I am. So the connectors, I think, are the valuable part of LinkedIn. And while we each have a certain number of connections, on average, we have 500 more second connections, and that's the real power that you can unlock by understanding the connection network in LinkedIn. What a great tool. I think it's the one built to last. It'll be around a long time, I expect.
And we perceive it, certainly I'm in sales, so I investigate what I can about a person before I reach out to them. So it's certainly valuable in that sense. What about as a company tool, as a company profile? Is it valuable for me as a company to be involved in LinkedIn?
Yes, so I want to go there, but to your point, I've been through a bunch of different sales training methodologies. One of them is called Holden. And another Sandler, right? So everybody's going to know one of these. Sandler says that making a sale is a 6-step process. Step 1, find some points of rapport to establish trust. That's what LinkedIn is all about. Go look up where somebody went to school, what books they read, whatever they put up there, and you'll find some points of connection that can really help you establish that initial rapport. So I think nobody should ever meet with somebody else if they're in a sales mode without having checked them out. on LinkedIn especially. But there's also this other mode in LinkedIn for company pages. And I think all companies, since there are 400 million professionals now in LinkedIn, should have this is your presence in this professional social network. They might not come to your website, but maybe they'll see you in LinkedIn. And so I think we should have company pages there and figure out who is it that we're trying to engage with, who's our target audience, and what could we be sharing on our company page that's valuable to them. That's the whole key. What's valuable to them? If we can figure that out, then we're going to share that on the company page. I'll tell you one thing. If you are a millennial today, you're checking out your potential employers on LinkedIn. If they're not there, you don't get it. You are lame. You're not going to be there for the long term. That's what they think. Flip that around. You're not getting the best and brightest. So I think we really need to be upping our game when it's digital presence. We need to think about things like LinkedIn and also the implications of just all these mobile devices out there. We need to have mobile-enabled websites. We need to use the new mobile tools.
Between tools for inter-office communication, company communication, should an employer or an employee have any expectation of privacy at any point?
What's privacy? Yeah, right. Well, yes, we should have some policies, and I find sometimes companies will they'll call the IT department and say, don't let them get access to Facebook, don't let them get access to Twitter. Well, pull out your smartphone, you got access to that stuff. So setting the firewall, that's not going to do it. So you need a policy. I think a great resource for everybody is a website called socialmediagovernance.com, and they have a tab on socialmediagovernance.com that says policy database. And last I looked, more than 250 companies had shared their social media policies as models for the rest of us. And you can sort it all sorts of ways by industry, B2B, B2C. I think we should all have a policy before something bad happens, because we could spend about 3 hours on bad things that are happening because companies haven't thought this through. It's impossible to protect information these days in a world of not just Box.net or Dropbox or a USB drive, right? We all have the Snowden problem, as we might call it, and the only way to get around that, there is no technological way. It has to be by policy and education and maybe a little bit of auditing or monitoring. So important issue, because otherwise, if we're not conscious of this stuff, there's a competitive bleed. I also think that social media is a great way to learn what's going on out there. And if our people can just learn a little bit faster about the competition, dive into those LinkedIn groups, learn from your peers, be the faster learner. That's what will win.
Well, Dave, it was a fantastic presentation. As I said, as you were speaking, I saw heads nodding, and these are from very substantial companies, very sophisticated, but I think that as you spoke, they realized how much they still need to do. So
yeah, well, these are all new tools that have sort of come out of left field, and we've been busy working our businesses, especially in the B2B or industrial sector. But it's time to take a look, because total game changers, much better productivity communications, just tools that are a little bit better for some of our communication challenges, and we all have lots of those.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I hope you come back to see us again.
I hope so, too. I hope our paths cross again soon. Thank you.
With Dave Nelson at the Global Forecasting and Marketing Conference, I'm Bill Herman for IMTS TV.